Hey, Som, thanks so much for joining the Sustainability Champions podcast. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Daniel. Wonderful to connect and great to be here.
Appreciate it. So, the way I like to start these conversations is just to get a high overview, big picture view. Uh, so, what is the elevator pitch for Clip Bike?
So, we are a clean mobility company and we are building plug and play e-bike tech, e-bike upgrades. We consider this a new category in the way that e-bikes can be upgraded. We want to make it really easy to upgrade all regular bikes at scale and leverage that to create the world's most affordable electric mobility platform based on bicycles.
That's very cool. So, how do you do that?
So, so if you look at the e-bike space, right? You've got e-bikes, of course, which are the way I think about it, e-bikes are kind of over-engineered for the problem. They're heavy. They're uh, expensive. But then you do have e-bikes. Then you have these upgrade kits that you can buy online, and you can upgrade your regular bike into an e-bike. Now, those ones, in my mind, are too involved. There's heavy DIY involved. You have to, in most cases, they send you like a wheel that you have to replace. You have to wire the
Hmm.
whole thing up. So, there's a high sort of barrier to entry for doing something like that. And when you do that, at the end of it, it kind of, turns your bike permanently into an e-bike. So what I wanted to kind of, sort of imagine in this space was a possibility which, where we have a device, a consumer device, which is, like a phone or a laptop, which you can, it's portable. You can attach it to your bicycle when you want to use your bicycle as an e-bike, and then just take it off just as easily to kind of return to the pure form of bicycling. And that was kind of the originating kind of idea. And also, I kind of go back to a bit of the work that I did while I was at the MIT Media Lab with this group around mobility. Um, and one of the key sort of pieces of, insight around urban mobility is that 50% and more of, urban passenger commutes are between 3 to 6 miles. So, a typical e-bike is over-engineered for that. You
Hmm.
don't need such a big battery. You don't need such a heavy, expensive e-bike. So that was kind of, one of the key uh, sort of ideas through which, this category was kind of imagined.
Very cool. And so, but I guess why are e-bikes so important? Why not, if the average commute is 3 to 6 miles, why not just encourage people to
Bicycle
bicycle?
more.
Yeah, and cycle.
Yeah.
If you have a
Yeah.
bike in your garage, why not just use that?
Oh, absolutely. And, I can kind of, relate to that because before I started Clip, I kind of felt that, myself and intimately. And um, I was working in New York. I was working, in Brooklyn, and I had like a 3.5 mile commute every day. And I bought a new bicycle. I just moved back to Brooklyn and I bought a new bicycle and I was doing that every day. And I very quickly kind of realized, uh, like physically, like every evening, because the same ride every day is boring. It's quotidian. There's nothing exciting happening, in that time frame. It's like 15 minutes of commute, 15 to 20, sorry, 25, 22 minutes of commute, especially if you have some uphill sections like where I live in Park Slope versus where I worked in the Navy Yard. There is a long kind of a sustained uphill, not a massive uphill, but just a sustained uphill, just those annoying uphills. And you would see, I would kind of like every day after the first month, the second month, it was like man, this is a drag, like quite literally. And also, I would see others around me, like just standing up on bikes, kind of, um, exerting all of that effort. And that was kind of the originating kind of nugget where it was like, this sucks. Like, what is the solution? Like, the solution was an e-bike, of course. Where if I had an e-bike, that that short, 3.5 mile commute, I would do it much faster, easily. I would, arrive home not sweaty. I would arrive work not sweaty. But um, but then, that's kind of where the problem statement began to form.
And so, how does the actual clip work? Because yeah, the name is the key
I
is kind of in the name, or the clues in the
Yeah,
name.
yeah. The clip essentially, signifies the key value proposition, right? You can just clip it onto any bike and, well, you've got an e-bike. But the key sort of, principle, the drive principle is nothing new. It's been around for many decades. I think the first kind of version of this was like back in 1897. I think this French inventor called René Gillet, who used to build motorcycles, I think he's credited to have been come up with the idea of attaching a motor to the front of a bicycle in order to drive it on the outside, so as to kind of create this friction sort of point driving the front wheel. And that idea kind of lay dormant for a few decades after, until I think 1940s, when this French company called Solix, or I don't know if the name of the company was Solix, but there was a product that came out of France called the Solix, which was essentially a 50 cc engine, internal combustion engine with an aluminum roller driving the front wheel. And that was hugely successful. That sold about 8 million units worldwide. So the key drive principle and the key sort of methodology has been around for a very long time. So it was all about optimizing this uh, this method that had been proven, and bring it into a form factor which would be light enough to kind of carry around with you, and sort of easy enough to attach to any bicycle. So yeah.
Got it. And so how does it actually work? So you take it. How big
So
is it, first of all?
it's about this big. I should have actually brought one here. I'm in a sound booth right now, but
No worries.
uh, it's about a sort of 2 feet. I think that's the size. Weighs about 8 pounds.
Okay.
It um, it attaches to the front of the bicycle, to the fork of the front wheel. So it has a clamping mechanism which essentially uh, uses the geometry between the, or rather uses geometry to kind of connect to the fork and the wheel.
Hmm.
So you align it to the fork, you pull the clamp down, and it's all very intuitive. You kind of like find the optimal position, and it's different for different bikes. The angle shifts, the amount of force is different. So, but it's all within the device that it intelligently kind of attaches. So there's a small motor in the front, and there's a controller, there's a battery, and there is a small Bluetooth remote control unit that you take out of the main device and you strap onto the handlebar once you've attached the main clip unit to your bicycle. When you start pedaling and you do nothing, you just pedal naturally, you'll feel a very slight amount of assist. It'll almost feel like you're riding a very light bicycle. And you can kind of ride around like that for as long as you want. Now, when you sort of get to an uphill, or when you get to a bridge, there is a little red button on this Bluetooth remote. When you press that, it kicks in, the main power, and then it really pulls you up the slope, and you kind of pedal along to, have that assist. and it reduces your effort by 60%,
Hmm.
I would say, and it just makes it really easy for you to kind of just go up a hill, go up to a long distance, and then when you're kind of coming down a hill, there's a separate sort of a white button which you when you press that, it slows you down, and in doing so, it recharges your battery. It kind of takes uh, the kinetic energy from the wheel and kind of puts it back into the battery. So you can then have a fairly small lithium ion footprint and have it last much longer than traditional sort of user experience e-bikes.
That's very cool. So it's almost like the hybrid of biking.
Yeah, yeah,
And I guess the point is it's because it makes it easier to bike it, and you're just simplifying. Yeah, like you said, if you take your commute that you used to do during that annoying uphill, that part
right.
stops being annoying because it's so much easier. It just
Yeah,
encourages people to cycle if they're thinking, oh, I don't really want to, I don't want to go through this uphill
exactly.
thing all over again. But with the clip bike, it just removes that sort of friction, and
Absolutely. I mean,
encourages people.
absolutely. And if you look at, like uh, commute patterns in most cities, uh, typically when you say, the bicycle is anyways one of the faster ways to kind of get within a 4 to 5 mile zone during rush hour, especially. So when you use an e-bike or when you use something like Clip, you can essentially, cut that even further. So,
Mm.
what would typically take me about, 22 to 25 minutes now takes me between 12 to 15 minutes. And then when I arrive, I'm not out of breath. I'm not, and when I'm riding, I can, I am more open and aware. I can look at things. I can enjoy that ride. Otherwise, it's kind of like, um, you know, you get exhausted if
Yeah.
you do this every day.
And yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense because yeah, if you get exhausted, then you think, "Ah, I won't do it today." And I guess
Yeah,
instead I'll look for an alternative, which would be, I suppose, walking, but the distances we're talking about, it's a little too far. So that leaves
yeah,
us with taking a taxi. If you have a car and it makes sense, then you
yeah,
drive instead, or public transportation. And so
exactly.
from an environmental standpoint, I mean, well, actually, just on the point of, I think the cars make sense. There's
Right.
a lot of cars on the road, but out of curiosity, I mean, at least I typically live in London, and public transportation there is amazing. And we're always
Right.
encouraged to use public
Right.
transportation because, yeah, a lot less emissions. But I mean, why not just encourage people to use public transportation instead of, if they're not in the mood to bike, just use public transportation? How big is the difference if someone continues to cycle instead of using public transportation?
No, absolutely. I think, public transportation is definitely, the way to go. I mean, public transit, with this kind of a mixed model with, public transit with last mile kind of bicycling, is, the way to go. I even feel that, between 3 to 4 miles, you know, picking that up in the domain of bicycling, and then anything further than that through public transport is, I think, the way to go. uh, in terms of of course, public transit helps reduce urban congestion. Cars are like the major cause of urban congestion, of course greenhouse gas emissions as well. But if we just look at like the scale of, say, greenhouse gas emissions, I think public transportation is about 25 times, you know, that of, a bicycle, which is, you know, if bicycle is at X, then public transportation is about 25 to 23X, whereas, a typical sort of a gasoline sort of internal combustion engine is at about like a 200, sorry, about a 160X of this. So, so there is a huge kind of a difference. And also like in terms of throughput, you know, if public transportation, can take care of about, I think, 12,000 commuters in 1 hour in terms of throughput, whereas, cars are at about 1,000. whereas bicycles are at a pretty decent like 4,000, 3,500 to 4,000. So I think, bicycles and public transportation is the way to solve for like all urban transportation kind of issues.
Yeah, it seems like in addition to that, I mean, I've been to New York and it's busy, to say the least. And I think everyone knows the stereotype, of what New York looks like. But even if you think of any city, whether it's London, Los Angeles, Hong Kong, there's just
Right.
a lot going on, and sometimes bicycles, unless the city is specifically designed for bicycles,
Right.
if you drastically increase the number of cyclists on the road, I think it becomes extremely dangerous. So it seems to me like there's kind of at least in London, they're really encouraging, and they were doing this a lot during COVID, is reducing the amount of lanes for cars and instead building cycle lanes to encourage that.
Right.
And if I think of Amsterdam, for instance, where it's a
Right.
city built for bicycles, which is amazing.
Right.
It seems to me like that's also a key component here, is the whoever's in
Excuse
charge
me.
of transportation really needs to think about the infrastructure. And I wonder if there's a way, if they see that something like Clip Bike can drastically simplify or make it much easier for people to use bicycles, if that would encourage, you know, people or the government to change how cities are actually designed in order to encourage that. I don't know
Yeah,
if you have thoughts on that.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
no, 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 absolutely. And I come from a background studying architecture and urban design. So this is, very kind of key to the whole, plan, if you may. And but the funny thing about bicycles is that, it is kind of, I grew up in India. I used to go to work, when I just finished undergrad, hanging out of buses, like just overpopulated buses, just overpopulated streets. And and it was just massive sort of issues around urban transit. Now the funny thing was, like, if more people started bicycling, um, the general sort of thinking around bicycling and suddenly sort of an increase in bicycling in existing infrastructure is that it becomes more dangerous. But it's actually the opposite, because what happens when you start having these larger cohorts of bicyclists, you start, the whole system starts becoming safer.
Hmm.
You see a drop in traditional, single, sort of vacant, passenger vehicles. Uh, you know, sort of, you know, they say safety in numbers. I mean, that kind of begins to happen. And Amsterdam, the transformation of, Amsterdam is kind of related to that as well, or rather a testament to that. Because once more people started using, I mean, nobody wears helmets in Amsterdam. It's just, there is no other kind of way to think about bicycling there. So it's just a part of life. So to do something like that, I think first, we have to make it really easy for people to, be able to bicycle. Um, and the way to do that is, I think, e-bikes for sure. I think there is enough ample sort of proof from the past, few years, that e-bikes will be the dominant sort of, mobility kind of mode. Um, then as that happens, I think uh, policy will kind of shift and take form around, the designing of infrastructure, the designing of street corners, all of that. So I think it's certainly linked.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's policy, although I really know very much, I know very little about this, but from what I'm seeing, at least patterns, is that frequently policy is actually a response to what's happening.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, looking at it from the other direction rather than waiting for governments to make the changes and then we all start
Right.
cycling. Instead, if everyone starts cycling, then governments will realize, okay, we actually need to um,
Right.
kind of accommodate this change in the way our cities are being used. Is the clip waterproof? Because I'm just thinking in New York, the weather is not always sunny and perfect for cycling.
I mean, New York is pretty good actually.
Okay.
London probably would be, a lot worse in that aspect. But New York is pretty good in terms of weather. I mean, of course, I mean, I still sort of bicycle even though it's very cold, and it's going to snow soon.
Mhm.
So Clip is kind of, designed to work in the wet. We have this um, sort of, a way for Clip to kind of adjust to a wet road when, it needs to work in the wet. Um, in terms of, you know, so Clip, we really kind of wanted to focus on the commuter aspect. And we've kind of seen, it's well documented that, bike commuting kind of goes down when it rains, especially, during wet days. So for us, I think that's okay to some degree, and especially because Clip is so easily, detachable. If you are really the hardcore bicyclist who wants to bicycle no matter rain or shine, I think those days you can kind of take Clip off. So I think the short answer to that question is it's not fully waterproof yet. It is water resistant. Up to a certain sort of light rain, but we are kind of going through, several sort of value engineering sort of sequences to kind of, bring that in as well. I mean, being an early stage startup and building hardware is extremely difficult. So you kind of have to bring the other extreme value propositions, as we kind of move forward.
Yeah, just on the point of being a startup, and building hardware, I mean, how has that process been going? Because it's much more, like you said, I imagine this is what you're referring to. It's much more resource intensive than, hiring a few software engineers and just doing code.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, prior to Clip, I built a software company, uh, and I know how short the iteration cycle, for example, is, and I've experienced it, and I kind of look back on those days with, you know, fondness because you can have like a half-baked application, send it out, get feedback, iterate fast, and, everything is fine. But when it comes to hardware, uh, you really have to get like the MVP in a hardware is on a different level than an MVP in software. So you have to get a lot of things right. Uh, and especially when you're trying to kind of, productize a design, manufacturing comes into play. With manufacturing, supply chain comes into play. And, you clearly sort of everyone is aware of all of the supply chain issues that the world kind of faced over the last 2 years. So all of those things have been an extreme challenge building this out. But but we've kind of persevered. We have a great team both here in the US as well as in India, where we are manufacturing these units. And yeah, we are ready to kind of start building these at scale. So we've shipped 102 units, the first production units. Uh, we've gained a lot of feedback from those units. All of that process is also very slow in hardware because you send it out, people use it, you give them a month to start coming up with real insightful feedback. And then once you get that insightful feedback, then it takes another couple of months to really, you know, uh, sort of build on those and design and engineering changes and test them. Then you build those out. I mean, you build the prototypes, then you build the actual thing, then you test the actual thing. There's quality control. So there's many pieces in bringing this to the world. And now we are at a stage, thankfully, where we are very close. We are, you know, uh, we are ready to kind of go into scaled production from Q1 2023 onwards.
wow, cool. Congratulations. Yeah, I imagine, I mean, another change, another kind of big difference I would think between having a hardware and a software product is with software, you can actually watch in real time how people use it. and get
Yeah, yeah.
metrics like right away, and you've built
Yeah.
some functionality and no one's using it, and you're like, why isn't anyone
Right.
using it? What, and you can watch it happening in real time, whereas with this, yeah, you just send them out and then you just sort of sit and wait, and then
I mean, we do, my co-founder, he's fantastic in engaging with all of our customers, Clément, and and he does he does this very rigorously, sort of getting the feedback, documenting it. So yeah, that is a whole other process.
yeah, absolutely. And um, just going back to uh, the Bluetooth, and I saw on your website that there's something about either you're developing or there's already an app that goes on your
Right.
phone. So what is that app?
So this product is essentially an IoT product, right? And we are, you know, sort of developing this. I mean, let's call this version 1.0.
Mhm.
Uh, we have, two other sort of variants in the pipeline. There's a 1.5 and there's a version 2. Now, the goal of the app is essentially to be an overlay across these multiple devices being used across the world. Different versions are going to be marketed for different geographies. So, this app essentially will be able to uh, record rider behavior in different parts of the world.
Mm.
You'll, you know, so for someone who is interested in knowing about their carbon footprint, the amount of bicycling that they did versus assisted bicycling, it'll be able to give them that kind of breakdown. The app will have a geo aspect to this. It'll be able to, localize you and give you benefits around your neighborhood, building, a community around you and other sort of clip riders. Um, it'll also, there are certain aspects which in the app which will be like the way Waze works for cars. There will be aspects where if you see certain moments in the city that you want to record and log as a data point, you'll be able to do so in a crowdsourced kind of a way. So you'd be able to kind of create a crowdsourced map of your city, your neighborhood, uh, and be able to kind of uh, use that to improve on things, to build community around things, uh, that kind of application.
Makes sense. That sounds much more like what you're used to working on back from your software
Yes.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that that kind of information would be really cool because ultimately you actually can track now without having to log it
Exactly.
yourself manually. You actually have
Exactly.
a tool that does it for you.
And they will be, so the version 1.5 and the 2.0 will also have a swappable battery aspect to this because we want to kind of market this to, customers for a low price point. So we are
Mhm.
looking at, India, Africa, where, the price point has to be much lower. So we're going to, we are sort of building a way for these users to be able to buy the base product at a fairly low cost and then use the battery swap uh, mode and use the app to kind of pay for it. So there will be,
Okay.
aspects of payments kind of linked to it as well.
Okay. So yeah, it sounds
And
like a
ultimately, yeah,
good.
ultimately, like the whole thing that I kind of see this is more like an app store for different types of apps related to bicycling that can be used on Clip. So yeah.
Mhm. Makes sense. And so you're saying selling it in Africa and India, and I realize based on what you're saying that it's not ready yet for purchase on a retail basis, it sounds like.
The version 1.0 is.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So the version 1.0, we are selling this in the US. We've already, sold about 1,000 pre-orders. We've asked
Nice.
for that. We are kind of building those out. We will be marketing this in Europe next, in Q2 of next year.
Hmm.
So the version 1.0 is ready to go, fully debugged, ready for, scale production. The version 1.5 and the 2 are on the next sort of. So they are going to be sort of targeted towards India and Africa.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah. Well, good luck. I mean, it sounds very exciting to see it finally coming together and scaling up and out. Out of curiosity, with just in terms of distance, because we've been talking so far about your standard commute, 3 to 5 miles. But what happens if you actually just want to do like a really nice long bike ride along the beach, but you're feeling kind of lazy
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
just want to go have an easy bike ride? How long will it last? How long will the battery last? How far can you go?
Definitely. I mean, that's a great question. We get this question, from a few of our sort of customers as well. With the current battery, I've done up to, 18 miles, 15 to 18 miles with this current battery.
Hmm.
Depends on how aggressively I use that red button. So because I have these two modes of cycling, I can basically cycle on the low assist for a fairly long distance. But, if I don't draw enough power using, the boost. Now, for longer distances, you know, the way that we're kind of thinking about is twofold. One is to produce this, accessory like this bag that you can, carry with you or on a bicycle and carry clip with you on that. So if you're going for, say, a 100-mile ride or a 50-mile kind of like a coastline kind of a ride, you can choose when to use it. So whenever you feel the need, you can attach it, ride it, use it like that. The other way that we're thinking about is an auxiliary sort of a battery that, you have it attached and then you just buy this auxiliary battery and you can kind of drip charge it as you're riding
Hmm.
these long distances. These ideas are not productized yet. They're still kind of, we're waiting for how the market kind of reacts to this. If we see enough demand in either of these, we will kind of pursue that.
Got it. Makes sense. But 18 miles is a decent amount. I mean,
Oh,
for
yeah.
like a nice Saturday bike ride, I think
Yeah.
that's great.
No,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah.
and how long does it take to recharge? I mean, if you are using it for your commute, to go to
Oh,
work.
so if when I use it, for a 6 mile, 6.5 mile back and forth, uh, actually 7 miles, so three and a half, right? So I only charge it, once. So essentially, on the way back home, it's a bit of an uphill. So, I sort of use up about 75%, sorry, 25% of the battery. And then on the way back, I kind of like it's mostly downhill. So I, use the region quite a bit. So when I arrive back the next day at work, I'm still, at a 75% kind of charge left.
Okay.
So it depends on how much you use, the red button versus the white button. There's this kind of like balance out recharge versus. Um, so so the question was, how long does it take to recharge? Sorry, it takes about 60 minutes for like from zero to full.
Okay.
But regular top ups are between 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah. So it's very quick. I mean, you're not gonna have to wait.
Yeah.
Um, it's
No.
not like an electric car where you better plug it in right when you get home, or
Yeah.
else you won't be able
Yeah.
to drive the
I
next
mean,
day.
exactly. Like if you're going on a long ride, you could just carry your charger and just, have a coffee and charge it while
Yeah,
you're kind of, yeah.
that makes sense. And what would you say are some future trends you'd like to see just in the personal transportation space, to lead us to a more sustainable, transportation industry?
I think, a really sort of a, a good mix between public transit and micromobility, like bicycles. Uh, I think, in the micromobility space, I think the bicycle is the clear winner. We saw sort of a surge of e-scooters in the past
Mm,
2 years, 3 years. It kind of lasted more as a fad, quite, work out in the 3 to 6 mile kind of a zone. It was more in the 1 mile, 1.5 mile kind of a zone. And it created more problems than it solved them. There were other problems in sidewalk littering and all kinds of things. So, so from the point of view of a platform, I think the bicycle is the best platform to you know, uh, to deploy clean, sustainable mobility in the 3 to 6 mile range. Anything outside of that to be, if you can couple that with transit, I think that would make so much sense. I mean, in a lot of cities, you can carry your bicycles, you have special bicycle cars, you can put a bicycle in front of the bus. There are ways to kind of, mix the two. I think that is needed more.
Hmm.
Um, and and of course, from the policy side, like infrastructure, bringing in more bike infrastructure, bringing in more sort of pedestrian and bicycle kind of commingled. Um, One of the, the nasty things that the car industry did was it kind of put, the pedestrians and the bicyclists at odds with each other. And I think that's something that, needs to be completely dismantled again. Like pedestrians and bicycling is kind of the same thing, which kind of needs to be more and more in cities.
Absolutely.
So
And why does your work, well, does your work make you optimistic about the future, especially for the environment?
it does because, I mean, one, of course, it is kind of like an urgent, there is a certain urgency around, you know, around climate action.
Mhm.
And, of course, people, you know, there are so many people working on so many brilliant ways to bring down emissions, capture emissions. So a lot of these strategies are kind of, the payout is still far away. Carbon capture, uh, and a lot of these technologies are still, 8 to 10 years away in terms of, deployment. Electric cars are not the solution. They are, uh, uh, they don't really solve for congestion, nor do they solve for emissions because of where they pull the electricity from. So what I see is that a lot of people are beginning to realize the efficacy of bicycling as a platform in bridging this gap over the next 3 to 7 years,
Mhm.
in kind of bringing down, uh, carbon emissions, uh, and also just improving city life in general. Just less congestion, more bicycles. I think that just, it's a win. So, so there is a trend in that direction, which is promising to see, which is great. Um, so yeah, just to be part of that, I think it's quite cool.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I agree. I mean, cities are, when there was COVID and I was in London and there
Yeah.
were no cars on the road, it was pretty cool. I mean, it was strange at first, but then you sort of got used to it and you realize actually the city is like really fun to walk around in without having to think
Yeah.
about cars. And yeah, even with bicycles going, it's not like they I mean, even if they do hit you, which they won't, but it's not going to kill
Right.
you like a car or a bus
Yeah.
will.
Yeah. Exactly.
And yeah, you feel like you can coexist together. And I can see why there is a trend in certain cities and in certain parts of cities to really remove cars and really encourage either walking or cycling. And yeah, being in Amsterdam, it was pretty cool just to see these insane, like,
Yeah.
bicycle traffic. I've never seen anything quite like it before. And yeah, no one, like you said, no one was wearing helmets, and it's just the way it is. And um, yeah, somehow it just works really well. And
Yeah.
the city is quieter, it's cleaner, the air is cleaner, and more people can move
Yeah.
without needing to rely on cars. So I think there's a lot of good that can come from it. So if people want to pre-order Clip and get started with making their cycling journeys easier, where's the best
Right.
place for people to go and learn about it and pre-order one?
So we can pre-order on our website, clip.bike. Uh, you usually, right now we are on like a $50 wait list. So you pre-order, you get on a wait list, and then we deliver. we are beginning our scale production from Q1. So next year, the delivery cycle is going to be a lot quicker.
Mhm.
Um, the other really interesting thing right now, which I should mention, is that we're also raising a seed round right now,
Okay.
and we have so if uh, this podcast is going out to any interesting investors who would like to kind of engage with us in the climate action space, please get in touch with me, and I would love to kind of engage on that. We also have a crowd equity piece which is on private mode right now. So I don't know if you would like me to share the link for that, and I can share that as well.
Yeah, that would be great. And just in case we publish this, for anyone listening, when Som says Q1, that's Q1 of 2023 for anyone who's listening. So, but yeah, I think the opportunity to invest in these kind of platforms is really exciting as well. And for anyone who's interested in purchasing one, you can go on clip.bike to take a look. And yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense from an investment point of view to at least look into, as you call it, the micro transportation for all the reasons we've mentioned, especially with the huge trend right now for people to move into cities. So cities are just going to get
Right, right.
busier, more crowded, more congested, and this
Yeah.
is a very easy way to alleviate a lot of those challenges.
Absolutely. And I think, there are two trends which kind of converge. One is, the movement of increasing densities in cities and the need for cleaner transportation.
Mm,
And the other is is a very clear trend of, rising e-bike ownership. People are buying e-bikes, and the e-bike market is, sort of projected to sort of double over the next 5 years.
oh
So
well.
the question is not really, whether people are going to buy e-bikes or use e-bikes. I think the question then becomes, what is the most efficient, what is the easiest and the most affordable way for, to getting most people onto e-bikes.
Hmm.
And I believe Clip is the answer for that, because it's the plug and play kind of category that it sets out for itself. I think that enables millions of people to the bicycles that they have lying around, or the regular bicycle that they're planning to sort of buy. uh, they can basically just get a clip unit and electrify those bicycles without kind of compromising the pure experience of bicycling when they want to as well.
Yeah, we actually didn't even touch on this, but the idea, I mean, that kind of ties into another really big theme in sustainability, which is the circular economy. I mean, if
Right.
because otherwise, if you want an electric bike and you already have a bicycle at home, you're going to buy this electric
Exactly.
bike and either throw away, hopefully not, but throw away or get rid of or something with this other bicycle that you're no longer going to use anymore. And I mean, it's a bit of a waste of resources. It's actually a huge waste of resources.
Absolutely. That's a
Um,
huge point. Yeah.
Not to mention
Yeah.
it's way more expensive to buy like a whole new bike,
Yeah.
whereas you can buy this little clip on. And actually, I didn't even ask how much is a clip.
Right now we are selling it at 549.
Okay.
So, it's about one third the cost of a regular,
Hmm.
e-bike. But, goodie bikes kind of go above $2,000 and above. So yeah.
Yeah. So to the point, I mean, save money, save the environment, go
Yeah,
with a clip.
exactly. And it's carbon footprint is minimal. Like its lithium ion footprint itself is really minimal. So you know there is a huge sort of uh, advantage to reusing all of these bicycles. There are like 170 million bicycles in the US alone, which
Wow.
could be put to work. There are millions of bicycles in India, Africa. Government distributes free bicycles to sort of in these rural areas. I mean, they could all be kind of upgraded at scale uh, in an affordable kind of a way. So that's the mission.
Yeah, and I just realized in in the UK or in London at least, you have these, and I've seen it in other places where you have the bike sharing, which
Right.
is government mandated. I mean, I see no reason, and I actually just remembered it was on your website as well, that I mean, you can just attach a clip bike to one of those. You don't even need to buy a bicycle. You just
Oh, absolutely.
go
Yeah.
pay a couple dollars, whatever it is, to rent it,
Yeah.
attach it, and off you go.
And it's really cool to see because it works on the city bike in New York. My co-founder Clem, he was in Amsterdam, Barcelona, Paris, and we have these great videos of him kind of doing demos, giving demos to people using the OV Fiats in Amsterdam, the VLib system in Paris. So it was really great to see like this one device is basically it's flown over the ocean and it's working in all these other different bikes. So it's just pretty nice to see.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, Som, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck. Sounds like the next year, 2023, is going to be a really exciting one for you with launching, shipping your products, doing your seed round. So, best of luck with everything, and great to hear about how you're making public transport or how you're making transportation more sustainable and affordable. And yeah, best of luck to you and the team at ClipBike.
Thank you, Daniel. It was a pleasure talking to you. It was really wonderful conversation, and it just felt really easy talking to you. So that was great. Thank you.
Thanks so much. GlobeChain is the largest and fastest growing ESG reuse marketplace that helps companies become more sustainable, save money, and achieve their ESG and SDG targets. GlobeChain connects companies from the construction, retail, hospitality, and office sectors with nonprofits, small businesses, and people to redistribute unneeded items, reducing waste from going to landfill. From fixtures and fittings going to thrift stores and being upcycled by fashion students, to construction material being reused to help build schools, items are requested super quickly and help generate impact to local communities. So far, GlobeChain has diverted over 58 million kilograms of items from landfill, and they've helped over 50 million people across the world, saving them 350 million pounds through reuse. Check them out at globechain.com.